This is Jenny Garth from I Do Part 2. If you could lose 10.4 pounds in 1 month, would you try? With Future Health, you can. Future Health gives millions access to affordable weight loss meds for less than $3 a day. Find out if weight loss meds are right for you in just 3 minutes at tryfh.com.
Tryfh.com.
Results vary based on start weight and adherence to diet, exercise, and program goals. Data based on independent study sponsored by Future Health. Future Health is not a healthcare services provider. Meds are prescribed at provider's discretion.
In Mississippi, Yazoo Clay keeps secrets.
7,000 bodies out there or more.
A forgotten asylum cemetery.
It was my family's mystery.
Shame, guilt, propriety. Something keeps it all buried deep. Until it's not. I'm Larison Campbell, and this is Under Yazoo Clay. Listen on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, I'm Maddie, a producer at Wonder Media Network, and I'm so excited to be guest hosting this episode of Womanica. This month, we're talking about architects. These women held fast to their visions for better futures, found potential in negative space, and built their creations from the ground up. Rooms upon rooms upon rooms. Staircases that lead to nowhere, doors that open to walls. Rooms with no exit and labyrinthian halls. These are some of the features of a house that today's Womanican spent over 30 years building and expanding. To this day, no one knows exactly why she did it. Please welcome Sarah Winchester. Sarah was born Sarah Pardee in New Haven, Connecticut in 1839 and raised by an upper-class family at the height of the Industrial Revolution. Sarah's father, Leonard, owned a carpentry business. Over the years, he became one of the city's skilled craftsmen who could fashion piano pedals, doors, moldings, and other architectural details suited to the trendy Victorian tastes of the time. Sarah and her siblings would spend time in their father's workshop, watching the craftsmen work. The family business was quite successful. Though their resulting wealth afforded Sarah a good education, she was confined to class and gender expectations of the time. In 1862, when she was 23 years old, Sarah married William Winchester, an heir to his father's profitable clothing company in town. But within a few years of their marriage, William became involved in his father's new venture, gun making. With their new company, the Winchester family introduced the next successful evolution in the history of gun making. The repeating rifle, an improvement on the muzzle-loaded, single-shot rifles that had been used during the Civil War. The rifle became popular, generating enormous wealth for the Winchester family, and turning into a symbol of the brutal westward expansion of the time. One of the rifle models even came to be known as the gun that won the West. Sarah and William set about establishing their new lives together. For a few years, they lived with Sarah's in-laws and built a mansion overlooking the Winchester Arms Company. The couple lived in style and traveled often, but the promise of these years was thin, as a long series of losses undermined the grand life they had built. In 1866, Sarah gave birth to her first and only daughter. She was named Annie, after William's sister who had died a few years prior. But Annie had trouble feeding and soon cried all the time. A doctor diagnosed her with a rare disease that prevented her from digesting food and absorbing its nutrients properly. She died weeks after being born, leaving the family devastated. For a year, Sarah barely left the house. Just 3 years later, in 1869, Sarah's father Leonard died. Sarah's mother followed in 1880, followed shortly by William's father. At the time, William was ill with tuberculosis, and the disease took his life within 3 months, leaving Sarah a widow with a fortune. And then, a few years later, one of Sarah's sisters also passed away. we can only imagine the profound sense of grief Sarah must have felt after so much loss. In 1885, the year after her sister died, Sarah left New Haven for good and headed west to California. She purchased a large tract of land in a valley near San Jose, encouraging her remaining siblings to move close to her with their families. It was a fitting place for new beginnings in the American psyche of the time, thanks to the promise of the gold rush and propaganda of the West and its never-ending land. A message that, of course, belied the bloody reality of Western expansion at the expense of the many tribes there. In 1886, Sarah, now 47 years old, commissioned a modest farmhouse to live in on her land. The house would not remain modest. Year by year, Sarah commissioned more rooms, more kitchens, more towers, more stairwells, more and more extensions that slowly created a rambling maze of a house. Sometimes she dismissed the architects so that she could build according to her own design whims, often drawing plans and directing the construction herself. After all, Sarah had the money to spend. In a way, the house was a typical display of the new and massive fortunes of this Gilded Age. By the end of Sarah's life, the house would contain 160 rooms, 10,000 windows, 2,000 doors, and 6 kitchens. It displayed contrasting architectural styles, varied details, and decorative gardens. The house and its mysterious owner became the subject of endless speculation in society and the papers. Sarah's private nature prevents us even now from knowing why she dedicated her days to this never-ending project. Some have speculated that she was mad with grief. Others say that guilt from a fortune built on weapons weighed on her. We'll never know. She remained private until her death in 1922 at the age of 83. She was mourned by the few that were close to her in a house so vast and empty. The house, now known as the Winchester Mystery House, lives on as a historic landmark and is open to the public for visits and tours. All month, we're talking about architects. For more information, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Womanica Podcast. Special thanks to Jenny and Liz Kaplan for having me as a guest host. Talk to you on Monday.
This is Jenny Garth from I Do Part 2. If you could lose 10.4 pounds in 1 month, would you try? With Future Health, you can. Future Health gives millions access to affordable weight loss meds for less than $3 a day. Find out if weight loss meds are right for you in just 3 minutes at tryfh.com.
Tryfh.com.
Results vary based on start weight and adherence to diet, exercise, and program goals. Data based on independent studies sponsored by Future Health. Future Health is not a healthcare services provider. Meds are prescribed at provider's discretion.
In Mississippi, Yazoo Clay keeps secrets.
7,000 bodies out there or more.
A forgotten asylum cemetery.
It was my family's mystery.
Shame, guilt, propriety. Something keeps it all buried deep. Until it's not. I'm Larison Campbell, and this is Under Yazoo Clay. Listen on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.